Okay. Fantastic. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for tonight of our Finding Preceptors workshop. Before we begin tonight's workshop, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm the program director here at Be Well Solutions. I would also like to introduce our other speakers that we are fortunate enough to have also presenting at tonight's event. We have Bree Tobertover, who is our marketing manager and faculty advisor. And we are so fortunate to have one of our outstanding preceptors, Linda Adams, here to also present on her perspective as a preceptor. She is one of the wellness dietitians at UC Davis Occupational Health. So very excited to have Linda as well. Thank you. Next slide. Before we jump into the specifics in finding preceptors, we do also want to kind of go over some program overview and basics. Then we're going to jump into the fun stuff of rotation schedule tips, site selection, covering the BWSDI rotation schedule requirements specifically. And then, as I mentioned, Linda's going to jump in and give her perspective on a rotation outreach and what she's looking for when interns are reaching out to preceptors. Then we're going to go back to our rotation schedule support and what you can expect from BWSDI, and then end with Q&A with Bree and myself and Linda. But feel free to shoot questions along the way in the chat, or, with a small group like this, you could just come off mute if you'd like and ask your questions along the way. But we hope by the end of tonight's session, you will feel much more equipped and ready to tackle that rotation schedule. Next slide. So as I mentioned, I'm going to briefly go over some of the program overviews specific to the BWSDI. So just as a reminder, we are a fully accredited distance dietetic internship. We are now accredited to actually have 2 pathways, which is very excited with the new 2024 mandate. So we do have a DI only pathway, which is specific for interns that are coming to us that already have their master's, currently in a master's program, or want to pursue a master's program that is not one of our partners, which you would see listed on our website. Or we do have the pathway that is the MSDI, and that is for an individual who would like to apply to our program, and then they would then also apply to one of our partnered master's online programs. More information on that can be found on the website. We are a 8-month program. We participate in both the spring and fall match. And we are accredited to accept up to 60 interns a year between the spring and fall. So that varies in size, but you would see that fall match tends to be a smaller class, and then spring tends to be a little larger, maybe 20-25, and fall 15 to 20. We are a full-time program, and we are excited to share that we do allow for prior assessed learning. More information can be found on the website. That application can be submitted prior to being matched to the program, or you can wait till after you're matched and submit it 2 weeks after. But more information on the instructions and how to do that would be on the website. Our area of concentration is corporate wellness and disease prevention, and we are owned by a Be Well Solutions corporate wellness company that is founded out of Cleveland, Ohio. So they started the internship back in 2017, and when they realized the value of dietitians in the field of wellness. Now taking a look at our rotation. So if you haven't done so already, I highly encourage you to download that rotation schedule that can be found under the supplemental application tab in our website. You will see we have our rotations broken down as the following. So we have a total of 1,040 hours, and those are spread out throughout the variety experiences. We have 320 hours for clinical, 80 hours for food service, 160 hours for community and public health, 320 hours for wellness, and 160 hours for what we call optional emphasis or flex, and we'll go in a little bit more detail on that in the next slide. So as you see here, when you go to look at the variety of rotation schedules, we do give 2 different options, and we call those the 5 rotation option and the 4 rotation option. Both take 8 months, and both are still going to meet that 1,040 supervised practice hours. We just distribute the hours a little differently. So in both the 5 and 4 rotation option, you will see in those 4 core rotations, the same hours will be applied. Clinical's still 320, food service is still 80, community is still 160 and wellness is 320. The difference between the two is that the 5 rotation option is the emphasis rotation, which you can take 160 hours and apply it to any area and field of dietetics of your choosing. So really allowing you to have that opportunity to explore maybe a part of dietetics that you might be interested in and really wanted to look into that further. Or you could simply take those 160 hours and call them flex hours and apply them towards the other 4 rotations. And that can be done. You could take all 160 hours and apply it to just one site, or you could divvy it up amongst as many of the different sites that you want. So you could take 40 hours and put it towards clinical, 40 hours towards food service, and so forth. So again, just one more area and layer to allow for that customization to truly give you the experience you're looking for in your internship. So with that being said, we wanted to poll, I guess with, again, a smaller group like this, maybe we don't need to poll, but we will still go ahead and do that. And we simply wanted to ask you, where are you at in your preceptor search? And this will kind of help us to be able to answer those questions. So Bree's going to start the poll for you. And if you could take a moment to answer, we would appreciate that.
Okay, the poll is telling me, it says your polling session is inactive.
Oh, I see people responding.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Perfect.
Weird. I am not, okay. I just only see this error message.
No, yeah, we are good to go. So it looks like I'm going to end poll, and it says that everyone at this time hasn't had the opportunity to start searching for preceptors. So I'm going to share the results here. Can you guys see that? The results of it? Nope. Okay. So I'll just, like I said, verbally said, everyone said they're at the very beginning of their search. So you come to the right place. I'm going to remove this off the screen now. So thank you for taking a moment to complete that. But I am glad then that you have come to the workshop. So we're going to be able to kind of hit that ground running. And hopefully after today, you'll feel much more prepared in those next steps. So I'm going to pass it over to Bree at this time for the next portion of our workshop.
Perfect. All right. So now that you've all gotten a little overview of BWSDI and we know where you're at in your preceptor search, we're going to dive in to talk through some rotation schedule tips and details for finding preceptors, as well as some ideas for site selection. The first tip for finding preceptors that we always start off with is to start early. And this means that if you haven't started reaching out to preceptors already and you're planning on applying to our program in the spring 2023 match, then you should start looking for preceptors like tomorrow, if possible. This process can be really time consuming, and you just never know how long that it's going to take to get responses from potential preceptors, to finalize your schedule, and so on. So in some instances, it can take reaching out to 30, 40, maybe even 50 preceptors. And so that just goes back to how time consuming that it can be and how important that it is to start as early as possible. We also recommend that you use professional platforms and social media when searching for preceptors. So, of course, LinkedIn is kind of that gold standard social media platform. That's where you're going to be able to make the most professional connections. But as you are all probably aware, there are lots of dietitians and nutrition professionals out there who are using Instagram, Facebook, and other social media platforms in a professional manner. And it's perfectly fine for you to send them direct messages. Of course, it can be kind of hard to go back and forth and plan a full rotation schedule via Instagram direct message, but you can always just get their email address and then transfer the communication from email after that. Academy resources are also really great resources to use while you are looking for preceptors. And the first one that I will emphasize is the Academy's Find a Preceptor database. This is a database full of preceptors who have already indicated that they are available to be preceptors for interns. There, you can filter it by location, by rotation that you're looking for. Linda's going to talk a little bit about this later on in her section too, and I believe Linda is in the find a preceptor database. So that's a really good one to start off with, and you actually don't need to be an Academy member to use that resource. DPD groups and local Academy chapters are also really good ways to get in touch with potential preceptors. With local Academy chapters, depending on the chapter, depending on how big that it is, in some cases, they'll be able to send out like a mass email to all of the dietitians in their state to see if they're available to precept. So that is a really great option. And then DPD groups, if you're an Academy member, you can be a member of DPGs, and there are, that stands for dietetic practice groups. And there are practice groups in so many different areas, from like oncology to diabetes management, public health, hunger and environmental nutrition. So those can be a really good way to get in touch with preceptors in like a specific area if you're like looking for an emphasis rotation in a specific area, for example. This kind of goes along with social media, but Facebook groups are also really great ways for getting in touch with preceptors. We have a few listed here that are just really popular ones for dietetic interns, which are the registered dietitians and future registered dietitians community, build up dietitians, and the unconventional RD community. I have seen interns go on those groups before just to kind of inquire about if there are dietitians available to be preceptors, but I've also seen dietitians make posts in those groups sometimes when they are looking for an intern or a student to be able to help them out. So those are just a few. I know there's lots more out there that you can join to get in touch with preceptors. And then going off of all of that, just use your connections. So try to think outside the box and go beyond the professional connections that you have, but think about your family and your friends and who they might know, who they could potentially get you in touch with to be a preceptor. Even if they don't work in the healthcare field, maybe they know somebody who works in the healthcare field, and then they can connect you with them. And in addition to that, your DPD professors, any connections that you have with like volunteer colleagues, your supervisors, just really think about your entire network and who you could reach out to. The possibilities are really endless with that. And so to kind of build upon that, we now have a little activity for you to do. So we're going to give you about like a minute or so to write down 3 connections you have who you could reach out to tomorrow or as soon as possible to inquire about being a preceptor. So I'll give you a minute to do that, and then we're going to ask everyone to either share in the chat what connections that they've thought of, or you can come off mute and share with us as well. So I'm going to stop talking so you can think about your connections. Okay. I think that was probably enough time. Does anybody want to come off mute to share with us what connections that you thought of?
I see Denise shared in the chat, teacher or a dietitian at a gym. So those are some options. Thank you, Denise.
There you go. Thank you, Denise. Anybody else?
Yeah, I can share. Yeah, someone actually, as I was going through stuff today, I realized there's someone that I reached out to for sort of informational interview last year, before I was even thinking about this process, and coincidentally found them again on another website. And I was like, oh yeah, I met with that person. So yeah, it has their own practice. I'll be reaching out to them. I was working with a dietitian myself for the past year, and just finished up with them. So that's another resource I have, and just a different organization near where I live, the community organization.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks for sharing, Jason. That's great. Yeah, we just thought it would be fun to have you all share who you think of, because it could help inspire some ideas. And I am just going to share a little story myself. So I did not go through a distance program for my dietetic internship, but when I was in undergrad, we had to do some field experience where we were required to find like preceptors in specific areas. And at that time, my mom was working for a school district. She wasn't in like the nutrition department or anything, but she knew who the food services director was there. And so she was able to put me in touch with the food services director. And then I ended up doing some of my field experience with that food services director. So just another little example there. All right, so jumping into some more tips, and we just want to reiterate the importance of details. So when you are reaching out to your preceptors, you want to provide as many details as you possibly can. Just remembering that some may have never been preceptors before, or they may not be familiar with distance programs. And so if you can just give them as much information as possible about yourself, about the program that you're going through, just so that they know what they're signing up for, and that kind of eliminates the need for any, I mean, there's probably going to be back and forth, but it eliminates that need for lots of questions, lots of back and forth, so that they know, hopefully know answers to their questions right off the bat. We also recommend that you create a template email for each rotation type, and this can really help to streamline your process, because you're probably going to be sending a lot of emails. So your template should include the tentative dates of your rotations, the number of hours that you're looking for, your resume, just so that the preceptors can see what types of experiences that you've had. And we also recommend that you offer to schedule a meeting, whether it's a virtual meeting or an in-person meeting. That can just be a really great way for you to be able to get to know the preceptor. They can find out if you'll be a good fit for them. You can find out if they'll be a good fit for you. And I'm going to talk more about this later on in the presentation, but we actually have our own email template that we are able to provide applicants with, that goes over all of the specific details that we want you to be able to share with your preceptors. So I will talk more about that later on, and mention how you can get your hands on that template, but just wanted to throw that out there. We also suggest that, I mean, this kind of goes along with the details in the template email, but it's just staying organized. So figuring out what process works the best for you for tracking your outreach, whether you're using Excel, Google Sheets, and when you are tracking, you'll want to keep track of who you're reaching out to, when you're reaching out to them, when you want to follow up with them, and any other information that you want to keep track of during that process. As far as how to organize your rotations, one tip that we have is to try to start with confirming your rotations with the greatest number of hours. So clinical and wellness, those are the two, like Katie mentioned, the two major rotations of ours that have the greatest number of hours. And it can just be easier for you to schedule your shorter rotations around those larger ones if you're able to confirm them first. With that being said, that doesn't mean that we want you to like turn down any rotations if you haven't been able to confirm clinical and wellness first. Like if you confirm another one before those, that is perfectly fine. This is just kind of one way to think about it, and one way to potentially make it a little bit easier for you to organize your schedule. And then when it comes to following up, so if you don't hear back from a site within like 1 week of your initial outreach, then it is perfectly fine for you to send a follow-up email. And if you don't hear back from them after that, kind of like the gold standard is sending like 3 follow-up emails, but there's really no rule as far as how often to follow up. We just recommend that you use your best professional judgment as far as like what makes sense for how often to follow up with people. But those follow-ups are really, really important because people get busy and sometimes they just need that little nudge to move the request to the top of their inbox, and they'll be hopefully more likely to respond if you're following up with them and they know that you're serious about it. Right, so internship contracts. So as you may already be aware of, there are, so internships have to establish contracts or affiliation agreements with their rotation sites. And with some of like the bigger hospitals out there, a lot of times they are already contracted with an internship that is in their specific area. But if you are interested in a site that you know is already contracted with another one of those internship programs, don't let that discourage you, because just depending on the contract, there are some that are able to have agreements with more than one internship. So don't let that hold you back from reaching out to places that you know of that are already partnered with other programs. Virtual rotation. So we do get lots of questions about this. So we wanted to touch on this, but these are approved on a case-by-case basis. If a preceptor's primary work responsibilities can be done in a virtual format, then it is more likely to be approved. So an example of that would be like a private practice dietitian for an emphasis rotation. That's an instance where that would be appropriate. We do really prefer that you have your rotations in person if possible, because it does offer, depending on the rotation, but it can, especially for like clinical and wellness, it can offer a better experience. And for both of those major rotations, over 50% of the rotation must be in person. All right. And so we also recommend that you use declines to your advantage and go into it knowing that you will get declines. That is to be expected. And don't let that discourage you or hold you back from reaching out to other people. Try to turn a negative into a positive by just asking the individual if they maybe have other connections who could potentially be a preceptor for you, who they can get you in touch with. And even if they're not able to, just try to think about it as the fact that you now have, even though they said no, you now have another professional connection that maybe you could reach out to again in the future for another opportunity. Searching for sites in a large radius. So we know that this may not be possible for everybody. And we are also fully aware of the fact that going through a distance program, a lot of times people choose this option so that they can do their rotations in the area of their choice. But we also recommend that you just keep in mind that the larger your radius for searching for rotations, the more opportunities that you're going to have. And if you limit yourself to a really small area, you might have a more difficult time finding sites. Try to be as flexible as you can with your commute and think outside the box. So if you find a rotation that might have a longer commute, just remember that it's temporary and it will only be for like 1 to 2 months at the most. And maybe you have a friend or a family member who works in the same area who you could commute with, or maybe there are just some other options. Maybe it's a rotation that could be done both virtually and in person. There's so many different ways to think about that, but we always just try to emphasize just trying to keep that radius as large as you can. So on this slide, we have links to the websites for the U.S. News Best Nursing Homes and Best Hospitals list. We will be sending out these slides after the presentation, so you'll have access to the links. But these are really great resources for you to use because you're able to, it's another resource that you can just filter by location, and you get a full list of different nursing homes and hospitals that are in your area that will work for your clinical rotations. And these websites direct you to the facility websites and like all the information that you need to be able to get in touch with them. So these are just some really, really great resources to keep in mind, specifically for finding clinical sites. On these next couple of slides, we have lists of various sites that could work for all of the different rotations. These lists are actually available on our website under the helpful resources section. So we recommend that you go there to take a look at these lists again. I'm not going to go through them word for word, but we did just want to touch on this just to hopefully help inspire maybe some ideas for where you could look. So for clinical rotations, of course, hospitals are the main place that people usually think of when it comes to that rotation. But communities, like smaller community hospitals, long-term care facilities, rehab facilities, and the other types of facilities listed here will work for clinical rotations. Sites like bariatric clinics, dialysis centers, behavioral health, mental health facilities, inpatient eating disorder programs, those will work as clinical rotations, but just as partial rotations instead of full rotations. So that would be a case where like you can split your clinical rotation and do it at 2 sites if that's going to offer you the best experience. And so that would be a case where you could combine like a dialysis center rotation with an inpatient hospital rotation, for example. The reason why dialysis centers and places like that are considered partial rotations is just because those are in some of those more like specialty areas and doesn't provide, we want you to get a really well-rounded clinical experience. So that's why those would be considered partial. Moving on to the wellness rotation. So given the fact that our concentration is corporate wellness and disease prevention, of course, corporate wellness companies are the first example that we have listed here, but also companies with established in-house wellness programs, universities that are providing wellness programs, military bases, employee assistance programs, fitness centers, athletic clubs, any nutrition, wellness, private and group practices serving corporate clients. These will all work for the wellness rotation. And then we have community and food service. So with the community rotation, options include places like WIC, public health departments, national public health agencies, SNAP, food banks, grocery stores, YMCA, Head Start programs, Meals on Wheels, and all the other options listed there. And then for food service, of course, we have school food service, hospital, medical center food service, long-term care, college and university dining services, corporate dining services, and all the other ones that are listed. And then we have emphasis. So Katie kind of mentioned some of the options for emphasis earlier, but the possibilities are truly endless for this one, because for this rotation, we want interns to be able to get some experience in an area that is of interest to them. So some really common ones or common areas include pediatrics, sports nutrition, private practice, outpatient counseling, diabetes management, eating disorders, nutrition communications, and public policy. If you have an idea for an emphasis rotation that is outside of these options and you're just not really sure if it's going to work, then you can send us an email, bwsdi@bewellsolutions.com, and just provide us with some information about the site, and we would be happy to review it and let you know if it would be appropriate. And then on this slide, we just have some logos of some of the sites that our interns have used in the past. We just wanted to give everybody an idea of the variety of different options that there are, just to hopefully inspire even more ideas for you. All right, so now we are going to talk a little bit about making cold calls, and just remembering that email is not always the preferred communication method for preceptors. Some are just easier to get a hold of over the phone. When you are making cold calls, being patient is incredibly important, and that's just because, especially when you're reaching out to big facilities like hospitals and long-term care, you might be bounced around to various departments before being connected with the right person. Just be aware of that. It is absolutely normal, but as long as you are just requesting who you want to talk to, they should be able to get you in touch with the right department. Kind of along with using a template for sending emails, we also recommend that you use some sort of a script for both phone calls and leaving voicemails that can just help you streamline it a little bit and have something prepared for what you want to say. And of course, we always recommend being as professional as possible when you are making cold calls. And just keep in mind that for some of the larger facilities, they often have like volunteer or student services departments that are the best place to start with getting a rotation schedule, or with getting a rotation solidified. You might also have luck asking for the food services director at the facility, who will know how to get you in touch with the clinical nutrition team. So just keep those in mind as you are making phone calls. All right, so now into some details about our requirements when it comes to rotation schedules upon application. So we do ask that you have your rotation schedule as complete as possible before applying. We do understand if you have some gaps when you apply. So if you just have a couple that you're still trying to confirm with your application, that is okay, and we recommend that you still submit it. But we do give preference to those that are complete. Keep in mind that you can use the same site for more than one rotation. So one example of this is with hospitals. In a lot of cases, those are able to accommodate interns' clinical and food services experiences. So as you are, making your outreach, try to think about, okay, maybe I'm reaching out to this place for clinical, but maybe they could take me for food service too. Maybe they could take me for community too. We've had interns combine like food service and community. It really just depends on what the site is and what the preceptor's day-to-day responsibilities are. I kind of alluded to this earlier, but your rotations do not need to be scheduled in a particular order. A lot of times we get questions about if like clinical needs to be first or if it needs to be last. But the beauty of our distance program is that you can lay out your schedule in whatever way works best for you and for your preceptors. We just ask that when you are applying that you list your rotations out on our schedule template in chronological order, just so that we can see how your schedule is laid out. A minimum of 2 weeks is required at any site. It is our preference that each rotation is completed at one site, but there are some cases like clinical, for example, like I mentioned earlier, where more than one site can be used to offer a better experience. We do review requests to split other rotations on a case-by-case basis. And because the food service rotation is only 80 hours long or 2 weeks long, then that one cannot be split because it is so short. Clinical preceptors have to be registered dietitians, but for other rotations like community or food service, individuals with other backgrounds may make great preceptors. So one big example of this is with food service. If they're a certified dietary manager, but they're not an RD, but they have years and years of experience working in that position, then that would be suitable. So we will review non-RD preceptors on a case-by-case basis, but that's just another thing to remember as you are reaching out to people. And then interns can travel for their rotations. This is another amazing thing about a distance program, is that there is that flexibility if you desire to take advantage of being able to complete rotations in a variety of locations. So if that's something that sounds interesting to you, just remember that that's also an option to look in a variety of different cities, even a variety of different states for rotations. All right, so now I am going to hand it off to Linda, and Linda is going to dive into the preceptor's perspective, so what she looks for in preceptor inquiries and more. So I will hand it off to you.
Thanks, Bree. Wonderful information that you've given out so far. I've learned a few things. I'm happy to share some of my experiences and what I look for also. I have been precepting students for quite a while, all on the UC Davis campus. For almost 30 years, I worked with Sodexo that did dining on the UC Davis campus. And Sodexo might be another resource for you, or Aramark, one of the big food contracting companies, because they have a lot of dietitians, and the dietitians are not always in a clinical setting. They have support dietitians and that. So reaching out to, say, a district manager or just a corporate office in the area that you're looking could be really helpful in finding a list of dietitians. But anyway, the school, UC Davis, brought in their own team to run dining in 2017 or 2018. And I found myself out there like, okay, now what am I going to do? I was really fortunate because I had my hands in a lot of things on the UC Davis campus. And so I was offered a full-time position with UC Davis. So now I work with the staff and faculty health and well-being program. That's half of my time. I work with campus recreation, which is 10 hours a week. And we do nutrition consultations with, I use undergrad nutrition students getting ready to graduate. I train them as nutrition counselors, and they get to practice before they graduate. And then I work for the Work Strong program, which allows the students that are with me to get exposed to just some basic lifestyle counseling. With the staff and faculty health and well-being program, a big piece of my job is lifestyle counseling in groups and individuals. So there's nutrition in there, but also just any other types of health goals. So I love working with students. I hate to say it, but it makes me look good because I get so much done because the students are so wonderful at coming up with creative and really imaginative ways to expand our programs. What I look for in an inquiry, I'm in the find a preceptor database. I like it when you have proofread something before you send it. When you start doing templates, and believe me, I've done this, got a lot of templates with my group members. If you're not careful, you end up sending something to someone and calling them the wrong name. To me, that just indicates a lack of attention to detail. So complete sentences, good grammar, to the point, short and to the point, don't need anything lengthy. And then knowledge of the rotations that I can supervise, so that when you look at my profile in the Preceptors online thing, it tells my background and it tells what I can do now. And it also it tells you what I can do, what kinds of things I can supervise now, and that I'm 100% remote, which our wellness program, when we went 100% remote in March of 2020, we never came back because it has just been so much better attended when folks can do it on their own time, you know, on Zoom in their own space without the commute. So attaching a resume is a great idea too, and any ideas that you might have, because if you look at our website, you'll see what we do. And if you could think of just anything that you might be interested in doing in such a situation, a staff wellness program on campus, to go ahead and verbalize that also as you write the note. It's helpful for me to know if you're just now applying, or if you've already applied and are already accepted. And so now you're firming up rotations. It seems like there's a couple different ways to do it. I'm not really familiar with them all. And then tell me which affiliation agreement I might need, because it can take up to 6 months. It can, believe it or not, it can take a year to get an affiliation agreement with UC Davis. So the earlier I put it in, the more likely we'll have it like finalized by the time it comes time for you to start. So it's really helpful for me too. And I, with community, I can be really flexible around time. I realize that clinical is a rough one. I get a lot of students, oh, do you know anybody who could do something clinically? I know a lot of people. I would encourage you to connect with me on LinkedIn. You know, when you connect with folks on LinkedIn, you can see all their connections. But our UC Davis Dining Services does rotations in food service, and she and I toss student names back and forth. I also know some other dietitians in the area, some in private practice. So build your network too. You just can't, you never know when you might be able to call on someone who you met at the poster session that you did back in, you know, when you were a sophomore in college or whatever. So just really paying attention to who you're meeting as you're moving through school. I know it's hard. It's very hard, but to be as forthcoming as you can with everyone about what your goals are, so that you can reach out to them for help. I have a couple of, on the next slide, there's an example of a strongly written sample, a message that comes from the find a facilitator or find a preceptor. Bree, can you move it to did I miss something on here? No. Okay, so a strong sample message would be, you know, a salutation. And then, who are you? A student? I am a student through Florida State University. I'm doing an ISPP internship. I found you in the database through the academy and thought I'd see, are you still accepting students? I'm a past UCD grad, did my PhD there in nutritional biology, graduated in 27, did my postdoc at UC Davis, and have some links over at the vet hospital. I can send my resume over as well. I know that the facilitation site thing doesn't allow you to attach anything. So this allowed me to reach out to the student and ask them, sure, go ahead and send over your resume. And then thank you for the consideration. That's to me is a very strong one, as is this one. The next one, you know, identifying yourself. I liked this one because let's see, what do I like about this? Oh, I will need 120 to 320 hours, depending on the program that I match with. I'd be happy to work around your schedule, make it easier for you. This is my experience as an intern and RD assistant at WIT, currently serving as health educator for my university student health and counseling services, and a private practice social media assistant. You know, tell me what your strengths are. I would be a dependable hand to you and make it my priority to be a valuable contribution to your work. I understand that you may receive a lot of requests. I hope you consider me. Happy to provide you with any other information. And then some contact information. So that sounds like a person who, all right, I'm doing this and this is what I've done so far. And I see what this person, this possible preceptor has going. And this is, you know, I could contribute to this. And so that's a strong statement. I believe the next one was not quite as strong. My name is, I'm a graduating student from Chico State, looking to do my community nutrition rotation with you. I was just inquiring about where I would need to go and more information about what I would be doing in general. Please let me know if this is possible. That one I'm less likely to jump on, only because it's going to take a lot more of my time to figure out what this person needs from me. And so really a more complete message is one that I will respond to right out of the chute. And I respond to all of them, but the ones that give me what I need right out of the chute they just always rise to the top. I don't mind being reminded though, because as Bree and Katie said, when we're busy, the email, even the red flagged ones, sink so low that you don't see them again. So bringing those up to the top is really helpful. And following up too. I love to hear from students who, oh, thank you. I got in, right? And so they let me know when they get accepted and they let me know what their schedule is looking like. I meet probably with 25% of the students ahead of them getting accepted to get to know each other. Not all, and it's not something that has to happen. And then the rest of them, we just finalize dates around whatever else they're working on. So if they have firm dates for such and such, you know, rotations, my job is 365. So I can work really anytime during the year and can be flexible with working with the time that you need me to help you with. So those are a few of the things that I look for in when I get those notes from any student looking for a preceptor.
Wow. Thank you so much for that, Linda.
Awesome.
Such a value, like I said, to truly have the perspective of a preceptor. So I'm glad that everyone's going to be able to have these follow up as a resource, because that really is going to be key in your outreach. So moving on, we are going to now take a look at what you can expect from a rotation schedule support from Be Well Solutions specifically. Next slide, please. So if you haven't done so already, highly encourage you to please visit our website. We do have a helpful resource tab. And in that section, you will find areas that already identify suitable types of facilities for each of those rotations. And you know what? Worst comes to worst, if you are still unsure about rotation site, we are very hands-on with the application process. So we highly encourage you to please email us at bwsdi at the email as you see there. And you can reach out about a specific site. If you do so, please provide the site name, the website link, and then the desired rotation you want to utilize that site for, whether it's community, food service, so forth. And also, if you ever have a preceptor that asks you, you know, what competencies, what experiences, what learning activities you do need to achieve in that, please reach out to us and we can provide that information for you. We call them preceptor summary sheets, and they are specific documents for each rotation outlining not only the required learning competencies, but then providing further information about the preceptor requirements as well. So the evaluations they'd have to complete, signing the time logs, etc. So we'd be happy to provide those for you, and you can send those over to your prospective preceptors, and that will give them a good idea as well if they feel like the experience that they would be able to give you there would meet those learning activities. Next slide, please. We do always like to mention that we do not give out any specific preceptor contact information. And the reason being is it's just to protect our preceptors. We don't want them inundated with tons of different emails, from applicants. And, if you've reached out to a potential preceptor directly and you're building that rapport and making that relationship, obviously that is what we would encourage and think that is the best way to do it. But we like to reserve that right, that once an intern is matched to our program, any site that we have an affiliation agreement with, we then will reach out on behalf of our matched applicant and help fill in those gaps for them. And we provide, we roll up our sleeves, and you will have the full support of BeWell Solutions in finding any of those missing rotation schedules. But again, as we mentioned, and as you see in tonight's workshop, we are happy to continue to provide you tips, resources, and other ways that you can start navigating and finding those preceptors yourself. And again, reviewing any sites that you have found to just make sure they're acceptable prior to applying. Another thing to mention is if you're interested in connecting with any of our alumni, we have a very robust alumni network. So if there is an alumni in a specific area or to discuss preceptors, you can always reach out to us and we will try to connect you with the best alumni in a geographic region as you, and perhaps they would be willing to share some of their preceptor tips and provide you with that additional support. Next slide, please. And then last but certainly not least, just a reminder, this is your time to shine. And what we mean by that is kind of as Linda mentioned, she wants the details. They want to know, what can you bring to the table? What are your strengths? So what, past experiences will you be able to provide and help make you a wonderful intern for this preceptor? So sell yourself. Do not hold back. Share experiences and accomplishments. Preceptors want to know your skills, your traits, and what you would be strong in areas that they would be able to utilize you at their site. And we don't want this workshop or this process to seem overwhelming to you, and that is definitely not the purpose. And what we mean by that is this experience, I promise you, is going to pay off in the long run. Every single one of our interns that has gone through the distance program, at the end of it says, wow, I'm not gonna lie, it was a lot of work to do all that outreach to my own preceptors, but what a wonderful way for me to build that rapport ahead of time. I have customized experiences that I wanted in the areas that I want, just geographically and specifically in the field. And, it's a really great way for you to possibly get a job at the end of all of it. Many of our interns will, because they picked those sites, they were able to find a job, and it's a wonderful way. And then again, if you get a decline, just remember, this is just one more professional connection you've made for maybe a possible job in the future. So maybe they didn't take you as an intern, but when you are a successful RD and you're looking for that career, you can reach out to the GEM and you have a wonderful list of individuals that you've reached out to. So just a reminder that it's a great way to have you work on those communication skills. But lastly, we just want to remind you that this is a really great way for you to tailor experience that you want. And it is a great way for you to really be able to get the most out of your internship experience with that. Next slide, please, Bree.
Great. So as we wrap up, we just wanted to kind of end with some details about how to get the Finding Preceptors email template that I mentioned earlier on. So if you are interested in this resource, just send an email to bwsdi@bewellsolutions.com. and let us know that you want the template, and we will email it to you. So it's as easy as that. This might just be the resource that will help you jumpstart your preceptor search, really just with helping streamline and helping you have a better idea of all the details that you need to provide your preceptors with. On this slide is just a little testimonial from one of our fall 2022 applicants, who had a really good experience with the template. So just wanted to show you all that, and hopefully you have a great experience with it as well if you decide to use it. So as far as action steps, so what to do next? I know we gave you a lot of information today, so we just wanted to list off a few things for you to do next, whether it's tomorrow, over the next few days, over the next few weeks. But the first action step is, of course, to email us for the Finding Preceptors email template. Reach out to your 3 connections that you came up with earlier during the activity. Save the distance application challenge post from our Instagram. We did this distance application challenge with the last match, and it is actually pinned on our Instagram page. And we will soon have one available for the spring 2023 match. It's basically just another list of different steps for you to take as you are preparing to apply for the internship. Just another good resource. Update your LinkedIn profile or create a LinkedIn profile if you don't already have one. Decide how you're going to stay organized with your outreach, and then stay in touch. We want to hear from you as you go through the preceptor search process. If you have questions, if you need help with anything, we are happy to support you in any way possible. So lastly, so this slide just provides our social media handles. So be sure to give us a follow on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn if you're not following us already. And we also have an email list that you can sign up for on the homepage of our website at bwsdi.com. We send a quarterly newsletter out just with different updates about our program, and then periodic emails as well, just with information about upcoming events and things like that. Sorry, I know I keep saying I'm on the last slide, but we're not quite there yet. So this just provides the dates for our upcoming virtual open houses. So during this presentation, we really just scratched the surface as far as all that BWSDI has to offer, because we were focused so much on talking about finding preceptors. So we do recommend that you join one of these open houses if you want more details about our program and want the opportunity to be able to connect with our faculty even further. And you can register for those at bwsdi.com. And then contact information for all of our faculty. Katie and I and our associate director, Tristan, are all on this slide. And then our email is listed here as well if you want to get in touch with us. And then we can open it up for questions. Whether I saw that there's been some back and forth in the chat, which is great. But if you have more questions, you can drop those in the chat or unmute yourself. And Katie and I are here to answer any questions that you have about BWSDI in general. And if you have questions for Linda about anything else related to the preceptor's perspective, feel free to throw those out there too. I am gonna stop sharing my screen. And, all right. Would it be all right? Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we can do that, Jason. Let me